Good evening, everyone. Ian Patrick here, and tonight's review is of a movie that is very powerful. Very powerful for me because I'll just start out by saying, sort of a little disclaimer that I'm Catholic. So this movie um, may may be more powerful to me than it was to you. But tonight's review is of the Song of Bernadette. And I was sort of saying a little prayer right there, just hoping that I can do justice to this film through my review. So I hope you all enjoy my review of The Song of Bernadette, which was based on a true story. This movie came out in 1943, and it was a 20th Century Fox film. It's interesting because I don't think David O. Selznick worked with Fox that much, but David O. Selznick had a large part to do with this just because he had Jennifer Jones in this picture, his beloved Jennifer Jones. And this movie was directed by Henry King and written by Franz Werfel. He wrote the original novel based on Bernadette of Lourdes, France, and her story. Now, right away, you can probably see the beautiful artwork of the movie, the movie poster. It was painted by Norman Rockwell, and it's an amazing photo. It looks like a photo, but it's an amazing painting that he did, and a beautiful score done by Alfred Newman. In fact, I think his score is one of the reasons why the picture was so powerful, and he actually won Best Oscar for it. So it stars Jennifer Jones. She plays Bernadette Subaru, and it has Charles Bickford, who plays sort of the priest, the head priest of Lourdes, France. And we have Vincent Price, who was in our last movie review, and that he played an assistant district attorney. And in this movie, again, he plays a prosecutor in Lourdes, very skeptical of the miracle that is happening in the town. Lee J. Cobb, he plays the doctor of the town, and Gladys Cooper, she has an important role because she plays a nun who is always skeptical of poor Bernadette. And Anne Revere plays Subaru's mother. I feel like she always plays the strong mom who's very strict, but at the end of the day loves her daughter. She always plays that character. And I have to note the beautiful, beautiful Linda Darnell played Mary, played the Immaculate Conception. But interestingly enough, she was not credited in the picture, so they kept her name out of the movie. The cast at the end of the movie, you don't see Linda Darnell, but she played Mary, which that's a tough role to play, especially I would say in the 1940s. Very hard role to play. So this is based on a true story in history about Bernadette Subaru from Lourdes, France in the 1850s. This small town little girl, she was only 14, I think. She and her sisters basically went looking for firewood for their home. Their family was very poor, and little Bernadette Subaru saw visions of the Immaculate Conception of the Virgin Mary. So based on a true story. I would say that for anyone who watches the movie, I would read the quote at the start of the film. I think it talks about believing in the miracle. It's something I will say. I believe in it. People to this day still go to Lourdes and are cured by the water that's there. I'm getting a little ahead of myself though, but I would just come into this movie sort of, you can be skeptical. Of course, I was even a little skeptical, but I would just enjoy the film. At the end of the day, that's what movies are for. They're entertainment. So, but I do love the story that this picture was able to tell, because it probably wouldn't have been as well known of a story without this picture. So, little Bernadette, she lives in a small town in southern France, very close to Spain. And as I said, she is looking for firewood with her sisters, and she sees the Virgin Mary in a very, very powerful scene. I don't even think you need to be Christian to think that it's a powerful scene. It's beautiful how they filmed Linda Darnell as the Virgin Mary. Very beautiful scenes where just you can't even tell it's her. It's just so bright and just blinding. So beautiful scenes whenever they do show Linda Darnell. But she's from a very Catholic community where basically all the kids go to school taught by nuns. And before she has the vision, we learn that Bernadette isn't the best student. And in fact, the nuns, or Gladys Cooper, criticizes her for you don't pay attention. And she didn't even earn a little prayer card that a lot of Catholics have. It has a picture and then a little prayer on it. And she didn't even earn that. And then, of course, she goes on to fetch the wood, and she starts seeing this vision of Mary, and that the apparition of Mary in the cave grotto at, I believe you say it, Massabielle. I may have butchered that. Massabielle, I think. And she starts seeing it, and you see this beautiful woman in blue. She says that she sees a beautiful woman in blue with gold roses at her feet. She never says Mary. She never says the Virgin Mary. It isn't until later in the picture that she finally says the Immaculate Conception. And it's interesting because Charles Bickford's character, the head priest of the town, he's very skeptical of that, because she's saying the Immaculate Conception. How can she be that? Basically, this vision that she's having, she basically continues to say she's a beautiful woman. The beautiful woman tells her to build a chapel in this spot, and the story turns into believers versus non-believers. We have at first Charles Bickford is a non-believer, and then of course Vincent Price, the prosecutor of the town, is a total and non-believer, the skeptic. He's totally against it. He wants all these people out. He wants the pilgrimage people to get out. He doesn't want people going down, praying, calling. He doesn't want people calling attention to Lourdes for this nonsense. It's not a miracle. So he's very skeptic. Of course, he's Vincent Price, doing what he does best. The evil government basically wants to shut it all down. The mayor, the prosecutor, and Lee J. Cobb, the doctor, he believes in science, so he doesn't believe in it. So I do like how the movie gives us both sides, and that was actually a true story, that the town government, basically, they didn't believe little poor Bernadette. And I do want to note Jennifer Jones's performance. Now, I've never been the biggest Jennifer Jones Jennifer Jones fan, but her movies are actually so good. And at some point, I'm gonna have to just start saying that I do like Jennifer Jones, and she did win the Oscar for Best Actress, which this was like her first movie under the name of Jennifer Jones. Her real name was Phyllis Walker, and she had been in like 2 or 3 other earlier films as under Phyllis Walker, and this was the first one where she was under Jennifer Jones, and she won the Oscar under that name, which is pretty remarkable. But just the way she looks and gazes at the Immaculate Conception is just powerful. And I don't think you need to be Christian again to see how good at. And she was Catholic. She went to school, Montecasino, where nuns taught her. So I'm sure she felt that a lot in her performance, because when she looks, it's like something has come over her. So very strong performance by little Jennifer Jones, who I think was 24 or 25 during the time of this movie. So it turns into, is the Catholic Church going to recognize this as a miracle? And eventually Charles Bickford does believe, because he says, if roses can bloom early, then I will believe. Now that doesn't happen, but Jennifer Jones, little Bernadette, at one point she digs and digs, because she was told by the Virgin Mary to dig over there in dirt. She digs and digs, and the miracle of water, a stream, comes out of nowhere. And this is when everyone realizes this is real. And that's really what happened in the true story. I urge all of you to read about it, to watch a documentary on it. But it's very interesting, powerful stuff. A miracle, because people began to who had problems, who were sick, would bathe in the water and they would be healed. And that's true to this day. So yes, the water has healing powers. And this leads to the church, the Catholic Church, doing an investigation. And for me, this is when Bernadette is told, okay, by Charles Bickford, you should become a nun. Basically, you need to. You're this power that has been given to you, or these visions. You can't just be a normal young woman. You need to devote yourself to God. So she becomes a nun, and this is like the last 30 minutes of the movie. So the movie is like 2.5 hours long, and this is where the movie starts to get a little tiring. It's a little long. So we go through this whole, she's being questioned by the church, and it's honestly awful how they treated Bernadette. But she basically dies a nun. She dies as a nun at the end of the movie, and it's sad to see that the church didn't really believe her at the time, but later, decades after her death, she was recognized as a saint, Saint Bernadette, and now it is truly recognized by the Catholic Church as a true marriage, or as a true miracle, not a marriage. Now, I'm going to give the movie a 3 stars out of 4, primarily because I do think the movie is too long. They could have cut it quite a bit down, and also just because, of course, it's a fantastic story, very powerful. But I mean, I think this movie could be cut down into maybe an hour and 45-minute movie. But because at some point I realize it's tough to get everything in to 2 hours, but I think at some point it's like, okay, we understand what's happening. But I urge all of you to watch. There's an episode of Unsolved Mysteries with Robert Stack that I watched after this, and I may put the link to that episode down below for you all to watch. But it talks about the true miracles of Lourdes, and people who have actually gone there and healed from the water, people who have illnesses that doctors have no idea how to cure it, and it's not magic, but cured by possibly the touch of God or the touch of Mary. So it's interesting because little Jennifer Jones beat out Anne Baxter and Teresa Wright. for the part of Bernadette. And the director said, Henry King said, all the others looked, talking about the vision, all the others looked. Jennifer Jones actually saw the vision. So I have quite a bit of books on this film, a lot of books, a lot of history and pictures. Here's a picture of Jennifer Jones accepting her Oscar for Best Actress. So let's start here. Henry King directed her in 3 tests in New York City and was impressed by her raw bone naturalness. He also found her eager to work and to learn. She volunteered to act in the test of other players being considered for roles in the film, and she played scenes opposite Lee J. Cobb, Charles Bickford, Anne Revere, and Roman Bonin. King put the footage together and showed the results to the producer, William Perlberg. I think you'd better choose this girl, said the director. If you go on testing other actresses, you'll end up confused, and you'll settle for some star. That would be a mistake. This girl is Bernadette. She proved to be a brilliant choice, embodying all the innocence and faith of Saint Bernadette. David Selznick was delighted to find himself with a brand new star created for him by another studio, Fox. He was perturbed to learn that Perlberg, the producer from Fox, had invited her to attend the premiere of the Song of Bernadette with himself and his wife. Unwilling to let 20th Century Fox claim his star, David instructed her to tell Perlberg she was ill and couldn't go. Selznick was so controlling of Jennifer Jones. I really don't like that about Selznick, but he sure could make great movies. From another book. Yet he battled, being Selznick, yet he battled out the Jones deal by telephone and cable, keeping the actress's service contract, but agreeing that Fox could have her for a series of future films. So he was basically negotiating for her contract. This was family business as it often functioned in Hollywood, but the association between Selznick and Jones was also a business matter. He was loaning her out and profiting before he ever put her in one of his own pictures. Jennifer's salary from David rose to only $450 a week when she played Bernadette. Thus, she earned $6,075 on the picture. But on the loan-out deal, David secured $12,300 from Fox. That was very little for what proved an Oscar role. By January 1943, David was sending names to William Perlberg, the producer of Bernadette, ready to share his hard-earned experience in how to photograph the actress. There was major press announcements with the casting, and the press reckoning some pains were being taken to conceal Jennifer's marriage to Robert Walker at the time. David grew angry and began what would prove a long line of warnings to publicity man Joseph Steele by saying that, quote, Jennifer was very uncomfortable during interviews. The Song of Bernadette was in production from March 23rd to June 24th, 1943. David then was in turmoil and in some sort of psychiatric treatment. How did the relationship with Jennifer stand? It had been argued that he was guarding her, not entertaining her in the grand style he had granted Ingrid Bergman. But David was properly proud that a discovery of his was being proven. In February of 1943, he asked Steele to get him a portrait of Jennifer to hang in his outside office. Joe tried, but Fox said they wouldn't release any to us until the release of the picture. So I asked Jennifer to see if she could get us one, quote, for a friend. David was surely drawn to Jennifer Jones whenever he thought of her or saw her, perhaps especially when he saw her in a picture or live on screen. Creepy. And remember, she's married to Robert Walker at the time. There's another picture of them at the Oscars. Selznick between Jones and Bergman. And That day was Jennifer Jones's birthday at the Oscars, and the next day she filed for divorce from Robert Walker. I wonder if Selznick had anything to do with that divorce. And here's one more picture. Oh. You can see there's a different picture of Jennifer Jones with Donald Crisp and Charles Coburn, I think that was. And here, I just got this book because I love Linda Darnell. Love this book. I'm reading it right now. Very interesting stuff in this about her performance as the Virgin Mary. Little Linda Darnell deserves happiness, Luella Parsons dictated from her column, for she hasn't had the easiest time in the world these last few months. Sympathy for Linda appeared to be mounting. Eventually, 20th Century Fox recanted, primarily because they needed her. A quarrel had arisen over one of their major productions, The Song of Bernadette, for which Jennifer Jones would receive an Academy Award. Director Henry King wanted the Virgin Mary to appear on the screen, whereas scriptwriter George Seaton definitely did not. The question was resolved when Linda was brought in to play the Vision. She would receive no billing, and hers was at best a cameo role. Seaton grew so upset when he saw the scenes of the Madonna with Linda in blue that he showed them to author Franz Werfel, who exploded with rage, quote, "If you release the picture with the girl in blue, I will write a letter to the New York Times." The scenes were reshot with Linda appearing in a creamy, misty light. Linda's Virgin Mary made an indelible impression on audiences, and hundreds of letters poured in when the film was released. Exonerated by the public, the studio had little choice but to acquiesce. Every time I saw that picture, I cried, said Monty. Quote, Tweedles, I guess that meant, that was Linda's nickname. Tweedles was so beautiful as the lady, and the part fit her so well. In spite of all her tantrums, I always thought that was the real her, referring to Linda Darnell having a really difficult life. Next we have Vincent Price's book. This is a new one that I also recently picked up. And this review is getting a lot longer than I expected, but just have a lot of stuff to talk about. The Song of Bernadette was a very popular novel by Austrian Franz Werfel, who had fled the Nazis for France and was then forced to flee again in June 1940, when the Nazis occupied Paris. Upon reaching Lourdes, Werfel heard the story of Bernadette Subaru, a peasant girl who claimed that the Virgin Mary had appeared to her in a nearby grotto in 1858. After being persecuted by the local authorities and spending most of her life in a convent, Bernadette was canonized in 1933. Werfel was taken with her story and vowed that if he escaped alive, he would, quote, magnify the divine mystery and the holiness of man, as evidenced in the life of Saint Bernadette. After a harrowing trip over the mountains into Spain and then across the ocean to America, Werfel kept his promise and wrote the book. Fox purchased the rights to Werfel's novel in 1942 before it was published and invested a great deal of time and money in the production. Vincent Price received fourth billing for his role as Imperial Prosecutor Dutour, a cynical man determined to stamp out religious fanaticism and disapprove Bernadette's story. Still bearded for the film, I'll note this was written by Vincent Price's daughter. Vincent was cold and handsome, clearly bringing a little of Manningham to the role. The action of the film takes place over a few decades, during which Dutour eventually succumbs to throat cancer, and by the end of the film, a pale and wasted Dutour joins the line of worshippers at Bernadette's grotto and implores the girl he once persecuted to pray for him. His performance attracted the attention of Daryl F. Zanuck, who proceeded to slot him in for increasingly interesting parts in the studio's pictures. And there's a great picture from the movie in this book. And finally, I think I have one more from my Oscar book that I just got. So another Academy book of Ingrid Bergman, of Jennifer Jones. She was against Ingrid Bergman, but Jennifer Jones won. So that's going to do it for this review. I think it's a good movie to watch during the Easter season. Let me know what you all think of the Miracle of Bernadette Subaru and what you all thought of Jennifer Jones's performance in the Song of Bernadette. There's a lot of history behind this. It's sad because one more that I'll note is that Jennifer Jones had a rough life, really a rough life later in her career. When she heard of Charles Bickford's death, they were good friends in real life. I've already reviewed Duel in the Sun, which they were both in together. And when she learned of his death, she attempted to commit suicide, but thank God that didn't happen, and Jennifer Jones lived a lot longer after that. But not to end the review on a sad note, but it is good that she did go on to live. She did not die from that. But let me know what you all think of the Song of Bernadette, and I will catch you in my next review.